Hi Nabil, great to see you. First things first, can you explain to our viewers who you are and what you do?
Sure, yeah, Ali, thanks for having me. My name is Nabil. I work at a company called WorldPay and I've been there for about 6 years. For those that aren't familiar with WorldPay, it's the world's largest merchant acquirer or payment processor, if you don't want to use industry lingo. What we do is essentially enable businesses, large and small, in over 40 countries and across pretty much all verticals to accept payments from consumers.
So it's always amazing when you start to realize that your logo is everywhere on every payment terminal. Well, we're here to talk about powering growth through partnerships. The first question is, how can better partnerships between merchants, acquirers and card issuers help to enable growth and success?
Yeah, I think partnerships are absolutely key in the payment space. And if you think about the way the payment industry is structured, you have to have partnerships. You know, there's networks like JCB and Visa and MasterCard and others. There's issuing banks, there's acquirers like WorldPay, and then of course the merchants. And all four of those parties are dependent on each other to some degree to perform a function or a service.
What are some of the common challenges faced by acquirers when collaborating with these merchants and issuers?
Yep.
And how can these be addressed?
One of the challenges is as payments has become more complex and more fragmented and more regulated, the requirements on the technology have proliferated. And the way that different parties, whether it's issuers or networks or acquirers or governments or whoever it might be, are treating those requirements are quite different. And so, for example, there are some industry-wide, data bodies like PCI DSS, for example, that controls how we treat data from a security standpoint, or some various ISO data standards. Not everybody is using those in the same way. Not everybody's implementing those at the same pace. Not all governments are endorsing those standards. And so particularly when you're an acquirer or a network that's operating in many different geographies and across many different payment methods and many different currencies, there's not as much standardization as you might think.
Looking to the future off the back of that, what are some of the emerging trends and innovations that you think are going to shape the future of partnerships in the payments industry?
Yeah, so I think a few different vectors. So I keep repeating kind of the increase in payment method count, but think about it from a WorldPay perspective. 20, 30 years ago, we had to maintain connections and integrations, maybe with Visa, MasterCard, JCB, American Express, Diners, Discover, China Union Pay, and maybe one or two bank rails. And that was kind of like the solution scope. Now it's like we have dozens of different payment methods, and so the number of integrations we have to maintain has increased exponentially. So that's where something like a partnership with a company that can aggregate some of those connections becomes super valuable, and that value proposition or that partner wouldn't have existed 20 years ago because it wasn't an industry requirement. Similarly, if you think about fraud and risk management, the number of data points available today, the number of threat vectors, the number of channels on which payments are being made, again, exponentially more than it was 20 years ago. And so, WorldPay as an example may have had a fraud and risk management solution that 20 years ago we could have built in-house because the threat vectors and number of them weren't that complex or that numerous. Fast forward to today, we have to partner to build best-in-class fraud solution because we're not a full expert in that ourselves. So all this complexity and fragmentation and faster development cycles has driven the need to partner to solve those gaps and do it in the best way.
Nabil, thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you, Ali. Really appreciate you having me.